And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, October 17th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the Super Chat button in the chat. This will help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it. And it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we're going to start off the show. We're going to preview tonight's game between the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints. A pair of rookie quarterbacks going at it tonight between Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler. So, yeah, we'll get into all the specifics of that. Then, in the second part of the show, I'll get into some different headlines around the NFL. We'll talk about Nick Chubb, set to make his debut, it's looking like, on Sunday when the Browns take on the Bengals. We'll talk about Andrew Thomas, the left tackle for the Giants, being ruled out for the rest of the season. He's going to be getting foot surgery. We'll talk about Jerry Jones and his appearance on his weekly spot on local radio in Dallas. And we'll talk about what he had to say. And then we'll also talk about Tom Brady, the ownership bid for the Raiders. It's going to be passed, so we'll talk about that and the limitations that he's going to have with him being a broadcaster. So, that's the second part of the show. And then, more recaps from this past week in Week 6. We'll get into talking about Caleb Williams and his performance on Sunday. Didn't get to that yet. We'll get into the Falcons and their win over the Panthers, and then we'll talk about last Thursday's game. I wanted to get into that, talk about the 49ers and their win over the Seahawks, and just kind of get into, talking about that, their performance and are they back. So we'll get into that and kind of take a little sneak preview to Sunday when we have the Super Bowl rematch when they take on the Kansas City Chiefs. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about tonight's game between the Broncos and the Saints. So, Broncos are coming in. They dropped their previous game to the Chargers. Wasn't a great performance for them. They're 3-3 on the season. The Saints, after starting off 2-0 and, kind of opening our eyes a little bit with their performance, specifically against the Cowboys early on in the season, they've dropped 4 in a row. And things aren't looking good right now for the Saints. Derek Carr suffered an oblique injury against the Chiefs. So Spencer Rattler came in against the Buccaneers. Started the game against the Buccaneers and didn't look that bad. I know the score got out of hand. I mean, that was a crazy game with the Buccaneers, but didn't look that bad. The problem with the Saints right now is injuries, because you're missing your top 2 wide receivers in this game. There's going to be no Chris Olave. He's ruled out, still dealing with the concussion. And it was going to be tough to be able to play in this game just because of the quick turnaround and having to be in concussion protocol. And also Rashid Shaheed, their number 2 wide receiver, and also their kick return specialist. He's going to be out. Could be placed on IR, I believe, with that. Yeah, so he's going to be getting, looks like meniscus surgery on his knee. So you're going to be down your top 2 wide receivers in this game. And, Shaheed was having a good year. That deep ball guy. But yeah, losing him and Olave, it's going to be tough tonight. And especially when you have a rookie quarterback. It's not like Bo Nix on the other side has a ton of weapons to work with. But still, you know, Bo Nix is, further along in the process as a rookie. Spencer Rattler is going to be making his second career start. He wasn't really expected to start this year, unless Derek Carr got hurt or if Derek Carr was inefficient. And Derek Carr got off to a good start. So, but yeah, you got two good defenses going at it tonight. And we've kind of been spoiled the last couple of weeks because we've been getting some good Thursday night football. More specifically, the Buccaneers-Falcons game from a couple weeks ago. The game last week, when we get into it later in the show, between the 49ers and the Seahawks, that wasn't a bad game. The Niners were dominating, and then the Seahawks started to come back, but then the Niners pulled away at the end. But that was I still found entertainment in that game. This game might not be as exciting, but we'll see what happens. So to kind of look at the league rankings for these two teams, looking at the offenses first. So passing yards per game, Saints are 22nd, averaging 208.2 passing yards per game. The Broncos are 28th, averaging 180.3 passing yards per game. Rushing yards per game, Saints are 13th, which is something they're going to have to rely upon tonight with, both their top wide receivers being out. They're averaging 119.5 rushing yards per game. Broncos are averaging 107.3 rushing yards per game, which is 23rd. And then points per game, the Saints are 5th, which is kind of inflated because of the first couple of weeks. They're averaging 27.8 points per game. Broncos are 25th, averaging 18.7 points per game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Broncos' defense is 5th against the pass, giving up an average of 190.7 passing yards per game. Saints' defense is 29th, giving up an average of 277.5 rushing yards per game. And then both teams, struggle against the run a little bit. Broncos are middle of the pack. They're 14th, giving up an average of 114.2 rushing yards per game. Saints' defense is 20th, giving up an average of 133.7 rushing yards per game. And then points allowed, Broncos' defense is 4th. Saints' defense is 23rd. Broncos' defense is giving up an average of 16 points per game. Saints' defense is giving up an average of 24.5. So, yeah, that's the stats there. And then looking at the injury report, like I said, Broncos, are coming in. They got some guys, some offensive linemen hurt, some guys on defense. Josh Reynolds, who was doing okay for them. He's on injured reserve. He's out till week 10. Actually, Patrick Surtain is out with the concussion. Is expected to return as next week. So that's a huge loss on defense for the Broncos. He's been great this year. And then as for the Saints, Noah Olave, excuse me, Noah Olave, no Shaheed. It looks like Taysom Hill's not going to play. He's doubtful, dealing with a rib injury. They got some offensive linemen banged up as well. So, yeah, so both teams are coming in banged up. For the Saints, like I said, I think they're going to rely on Alvin Kamara a lot in this game. They're going to have to. I think Spencer Rattler's going to have to manage the game as best he can. Limit turnovers against this good Broncos defense. Now, you're not going to be going up against Patrick Surtain, which is good. But still a very good Broncos defense. So the game plan, I think is to rely on Alvin Kamara. And, like I said, Spencer Rattler's going to have to manage the game a little bit. And then for the Broncos, look, Bo Nix, he hasn't been bad this year. I know last week wasn't great for the Broncos against the Chargers, who have a good defense. But you know what? He's been okay so far this year. The pass defense for the Saints isn't great, so maybe they could take advantage of that. Cortland Sutton, scored touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 weeks So, get him going in this game. But the thing I failed to mention is Sean Payton making his return to New Orleans for the first time, coaching against his former team. So, they're going to have something planned, I would imagine. Um, with all the success that he had over in New Orleans, the Super Bowl championship against the Colts way back when, seems like forever ago. A lot of good years there with him as the head coach. I mean, there were some bad years, and there were some scandals, of course. But him and Drew Brees, that was a good duo. That the Saints found a lot of success there. So we'll see if they have anything planned tonight. I would imagine they do to honor him. But I actually do like the Broncos in this game. I don't feel great about it. I the way both teams are at the moment. The Broncos, I would say, are the healthier team, even though, yes, you're missing your top corner, which I didn't realize. That is not good. But I do think, Bo Nix, like I said, is further along in the process as a rookie quarterback. I mean, it's going to be a very tough environment. That place, still brings the energy. Not like it used to back in the day when Sean Payton and Drew Brees were still around in New Orleans, but that place still gets loud. But I'm pretty sure Sean Payton probably, has these guys prepared for it. So I like the Broncos to win a low-scoring game. I'm gonna say final score. I'm gonna say 20 to 16. I'm gonna say final score there. Um, I think they get the win, and you know what? Defense travels, so you get turnovers off of Spencer Rattler, give Bo Nix a short field. They could take advantage of that, but I don't know. I think it's a low scoring game, and if the Saints had Olave and Shaheed in this game, it'd be definitely be different, but Spencer Rattler, this is going to be his second career start, and I think he's going to struggle against good defense. And you know what? Bo Nix is going to struggle in this game at times, I would imagine. But I'm going to take the team with the with the better head coach in this matchup. He knows the ins and outs of the organization on the other side, so I think he's going to have his team ready to go, and I think the Broncos get the win here and improve to 4-3 on the year. So that's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think will win this game? Let me know in the comments. So when we come back from our first break of the show, I'm going to talk about several different things. We'll talk about Nick Chubb's return, Jerry Jones, his comments on his weekly radio spot, Brady's ownership bid, and we'll get into Andrew Thomas and being out for the rest of the season and how that impacts the Giants. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.